Are you on the fence about Android or iOS? I am. I can tell you that I was a very long time user of iOS, and the only reason I switched is because of a business that I started that iOS could not support. But anyways, since then I switched back to iOS, and then I missed Android, so I switched back, and now I actually have two phones. As you can see, they're not new. I have a Samsung S8 Plus and an iPhone 7 Plus that I got from my wife. She currently upgraded to the XR, and I love them both, and I cannot decide. But the ecosystem of iOS is very tempting to move over to. On the flip side, there are a few features that Android still has that Apple has not caught up to. And I'm not talking about the split screen multitasking. So let's get into it. The good, the bad, the ugly. Before I begin, I just want to thank you for coming. And this is a new channel, so I'd really appreciate it if you supported it by subscribing, hitting the like button. If you hate it, hit the dislike button, and leave a comment. I'll ask you a question later on in the video, and I'd love to see your answers. So my initial switch to Android was the OnePlus 3T when it was still brand new, and actually it was a couple months released already. So at the time I didn't do my research. I didn't know that they release a phone every 6 months typically. So I was very disappointed whenever I saw the OnePlus 5 released. But anyways, I sold the OnePlus and I immediately regretted it. But switching back to iPhone was a big relief too, because it's just like coming home. You know, everything's so intuitive and user-friendly and smooth. This phone only has 3 gigs of RAM. This phone has 4 gigs of RAM, and I'm already noticing a slight lag and no lag in the iOS because it's so well optimized, especially with the newest release. I think it's iOS 12. Obviously, if I'm on the fence, it means that there are good, bad, and ugly in both of these operating systems. So let's start with Android, just because it is on the left, your left, not mine. And the good, I really like Android because it is customizable. You can have your app icons arranged in whatever order you want. They don't all have to be at the top. I really appreciate that. And I do like the widgets, even though I don't use them. And I do really like the back button and the multitask button. Sorry, the recents button. I really like the back button. I do miss that one whenever I go back to iOS. So there is that. That's the good. The bad. The bad is the choppiness and the extra skin that a lot of manufacturers add on. I did like OnePlus because Oxygen is just so smooth and quick and simple, and I really appreciate that you can modify the names under your app icons, or you can delete them completely. I like a minimalist look, so I deleted all my app names all the time. And I do like that Oxygen always sends you updates fairly quickly. That's not something that Samsung has been good at, and I did notice that. The ugly. The ugly is that it is choppy. The good, there's so much good. I love the form factor. I really like that the edges are tapered and it's slimmer than the iPhone Plus sizes, but yet the screen is bigger. So I do love that. And the pictures are fairly close, the cameras are fairly close, but the S8 is just a little bit better, and I appreciate that. I also appreciate the expandable storage in the SIM card tray. So you can put a SIM card in and then an SD card as well. And I do really like the double click to launch the camera app, no matter where you are in the phone. Something that I really like about Samsung is Samsung Pay. Samsung Pay lets you pay anywhere where you can swipe a card. Not only NFC, which is the usual payment method with phones, so near field communication, you know, like the tap when you pay with your card, but it also sends magnetic pulses to the card reader if it doesn't have the tap option or the NFC option, which I have used because Walmart here in Canada, or at least the local one, does not have tap to pay. So I have used my phone over there at Walmart to pay for stuff, which is really good because I don't like to carry a wallet if I don't have to, and I'm always carrying my phone. The ugly. I hate to say this, but the ugly is there's no iMessage. Let's talk about iOS now. The good. It's so smooth. I said this before, but that's so good. And it's also really intuitive with the new iOS. Let me backtrack a bit. The reason I love the Android so much is there are a few things, but one of the main reasons was LastPass integration. I know that they have Keychain with iOS, but Keychain doesn't work in Chrome, and that's the browser I like to use. And at work, I do not have a Mac, so I can't use Keychain at work. But that was one thing. I really like the always-on display and wireless charging, which I know the iPhone 10s have wireless charging, so that's a non-issue. But I do like having my phone on my bedside table in the charger with the always-on display. So I use it as an alarm clock. I glance at it when I wake up in the middle. I glance at it in the middle of the night, and I just really enjoy the always-on display more so than I thought. And the other reason I really like Android is no matter where I am in the phone, I can double click on the power button or the lock button, whatever you want to call it, and the camera app will launch. And having 4 little girls, I know I always talk about them, but I love them so much. There are so many Kodak moments. Fiddling with my phone to find the camera app takes precious time, and I often or almost always miss that special moment as a result. That being said, I'm going to put my Android down for a minute, and I want to talk about how I'm leaning more towards iOS and the reasons why. I talked about LastPass. There's now LastPass integration into other apps. So whenever you have a password option, you have 2 choices now if you have LastPass downloaded. You can choose LastPass or Keychain, which is great. What else? You can't double tap the lock button, but from the lock screen you can swipe left and the camera app will show up, which is really good. So the only things holding me back now is the magnetic pay, I forget what they call it, and the always on display. I'm pretty sure my next phone will be an iPhone XS or the next version of iPhone that they launch next year. I'm still on the fence, so I might get a Galaxy S10 when it comes out. I'm not sure. The ugly about iPhone, or iOS I should say, not much. It is expensive. It's expensive, but my wife's iPhone XR, which I'm using right now actually to shoot this video, is only $40 a month for 2 years. And that's not that much. So please comment, tell me if you prefer iOS or Android and why. And you never know, maybe you might influence which one I choose for my next phone.